I want to welcome you to my art stable. I've been working on some cumulus clouds and just trying to break it down into a method to teach you how to do some cumulus clouds with watercolor. Now these are some pictures that I took on our farm, and you can see the puffy, billowy clouds and how they're more shadowed on the underside. And this is shadowed. It seems to be shadowed, actually it is shadowed, to the left, lower. So the sun is above and it's to the right. So the density of the cloud is causing the shadow to show underneath it. And that will be where it'll be darker on each end of the cloud. Will be more towards the left, lower. So here are some other images. This is that same cloud setup, only a little larger. And this one is a little bit of a different area. You can see each cloud is very different. You know that. It's amazing how God paints his skies. You can also see with this one, the perspective, how the cloud that's closer to you is larger, and as it gets further away, as each cloud gets further away, it gets lower and lower and smaller, and they actually look closer together. If they are all similar, in a similar grouping, they get lower and lower and lower, and further away, they become smaller and smaller looking, and actually lose a lot of their detail as they get further away. Same here and here. These are a little more irregular shaped. You can actually see them blotching the sky. It looks more random. You can't go wrong painting clouds. Just have fun doing it. This one was just, I just think God's amazing. He just decorates the clouds. My grandson and I call them cotton candy clouds. And that's what they look like to me, is cotton candy, and we have fun with that. So let me just get started painting some. I'm trying to, I think maybe this setup or the setup of clouds. Trying to decide, maybe this setup right here. And I don't want you to be consumed about whether or not you're painting something exactly as you see it with clouds. Clouds, a lot of artists use clouds to direct your eye through a painting. So it's not, they are not the exact clouds that an artist saw when that artist was about to paint their image. I'm going to load my brush with some cerulean blue and some ultramarine blue. I'm going to use a little Payne's gray here also. I usually put on more of a clear coat of water, but for this demonstration purpose, I'm going to use it with some color so that you can see, so you can actually see where I'm trying to leave it open for a cloud. I'm going to saturate the paper a little more. I'm starting to block in where I want my clouds. I'm going to make it an irregular shape. There's some clouds here. Don't obsess about getting it perfect. It's not the end all. God paints the clouds different every day. So allow yourself to make it look a little different. It's fine if it's not exactly what you see. Like I said, artists manipulate clouds so it'll direct your eye through a painting. Sometimes they'll even take full clouds out to give you a different image. I want this a little wetter. I put a little Payne's gray on my brush. It might show. There it is. I'm going to make that little shadow to the lower left of this cloud and tease it out just a little bit. I'm trying to get up over the top of my painting. It's tricky when I'm filming to get to a point where I can actually see and paint to be able to demonstrate accurately in this kind of a situation. I'm just fluffing in and teasing in some of these lines. I'm using a round brush. Round brushes are my preference most of the time, no matter what medium I'm working in. I like round brushes. I think it's the detail that I enjoy. I can get right in. I'm going to paint a little bit of this bottom cloud that's a little bit above this cloud. These two are clumped together, and it kind of comes out. The Payne's Gray is a really cool color because it's not black, but you can use it in areas where you'd like to use black or darker colors. It's a bluish kind of a gray. Now, clouds have a lot of depth in them. That's a little too dark. Watercolor, it can go out of control really fast. You can keep it in control by knowing where to place your watercolor paint and letting it bleed into other areas. You can go in and dab it off. You can also go in and lift off. I'll show you how to lift off in a minute. Right now I want to keep my brush loaded. I'm going to kind of fluff up these clouds a little bit here. That gray is a little too gray for what I want, so now I'm going to go in. I'm going to wipe my brush off a little bit, and I'm going to lift off some of this color. That makes sense. With watercolor, there is an advantage of being able to let your colors bleed. That's a little harsh, so I'm going to go in and move it around a little bit. Teasing in some of these shapes. Lifted that off. I'm going to put on a little bit of the Payne's Gray on the bottom of this one where I see it's darker. It's going to bleed, and that's what I want it to do. You can fight the bleeding or you can embrace it. Artists actually use the bleeding to make textures. It's just easier, and it just looks so much freer. Now the sky, as it gets further away, also gets a little lighter, a little blurrier. I'll leave some space for some clouds as it gets further away. I don't know if you could see that bleed. Right about down here would be where the field was. I want a richer color up here, and it's okay. You can, Bob Ross always called those things happy mistakes, and he was painting in oils, so try not to obsess. Just have some fun. I'm going to block in the sky a little bit better. A little more ultramarine blue with a cerulean. I'm going to blend it in here. Tease up this cloud in the sky. I hope this is starting to become evident that they are clouds. Making the sky a little lighter as I go down. You can still see the shadow underneath these clouds. I'm going to put in, reinstate those shadows a little bit. I'm going to get a little more Payne's Gray. And I'm going to Put a little Payne's gray, hopefully a little thinner up in these clouds. God paints the clouds different every day. The sky looks different every day. If you were to take a picture each day, you would find that no two pictures looked exactly the same. That's just the majesty of God. And I think you should embrace the fact that you can change the sky if you choose to. Take artistic license, have a little fun. I'm trying to blend the sky a little bit down here. I'm going to dry my brush off a little, and I'm just going to dip in and see, I'm going to put in some ultramarine with some cerulean blue, and I'm just going to go in and kind of tease in some of this cauliflower looking kind of edges that you see in the clouds, kind of define it a little bit. You don't need to make every, little edge, every little dot. You don't need to. Just put the illusion of that kind of marshmallowy, cauliflower-ish edge. And we put some in here too. The clouds tend to go, horizontally. They're floating on an atmosphere. They tend to go this way most of the time. I imagine if you were a storm watcher, you could say, oh no. And I'm sure with a tornado or a hurricane, no. I know where I live, snow flies sideways. Most people think of it as coming down nice and straight, but where I live, snow goes sideways. So there's always an exception to every rule. But mostly the bottoms of those clouds do float on an atmospheric level, and they go horizontally. So I'm hoping this kind of helps you to see kind of some of the basis and basics. You can spend a lot of time or a little time I don't really like that. I'm going to lift it out with a little bit of a paper towel, just lighten it up a little bit. You can also think about the negative space that's in between your clouds. You can paint that in there. Your watercolors are going to bleed a little bit, and as they dry, they move around a little if your paper's very wet. If you want more control, keep your paper dry. With clouds, I think less control is more fun, and it kind of lends itself, having your paper wet lends itself really well to the shape of the organic shape of the cloud. So you can have a little fun and loosen up. And so what? If it doesn't work out or you don't think you like it, who cares, right? And just do it to have some fun. Do it to get some experience with it. You might really surprise yourself. You can have a good time. With all that's going on right now in the world, if you can take a little time and paint, enjoy God's majesty, not stress about it. I think there's something to be said for that. God himself is an amazing creator, and he gave us a little bit of that so that we can enjoy how he feels and how he creates. And he's just like the master painter. I'm going to blend that a little bit. So right down here at the very, very bottom is where the field is. What's cool about this image is that our field, we are on rolling hills. We have a lot of hills. So the clouds actually drop down behind the hills, and they don't shrink back into space. If I were on a flat plane, you would see the clouds completely shrink down. But we're near a lake and we're on rolling hills, so the clouds stay similar in size. So I'm going to go in and just kind of touch in a little bit. I'm going to use a little bit of my Payne's Gray because I want to get some of those edges, some of the depth in that cloud, touch it in. It's a little wet, so it's going to bleed. I wanted to add a little bit of the depth on those edges. I'm using a round number 12 brush. Trying to reinstate some of those lines, give it a little bit more depth. It's just like drawing. I think painting can do things that are more painstaking for you in drawing. You know, painting can cover big areas quickly, while drawing takes it a little bit longer. Now that is moving up into my sky, which is fine. I hope this is making some sense to you. It gets tricky when I'm trying to draw or paint for you. It's tricky because I'm standing in an awkward position trying to film, and it's not always convenient. Sometimes I do need to get quiet when I'm drawing. I say that a lot. It's just, I think it's kind of a caveat to let you know that it's kind of tricky to have to draw or paint and talk through the whole thing. So anyhow, I'm hoping that this may have helped you kind of see how you might attack painting some cumulus clouds. I could let this dry and go back in and reinstate certain lines, and I try to let my white be the white in the painting. There is white in watercolor. I think of it more as a gouache, but there is white in watercolor. Right there, some white. You can use it. There's no law that says you can't. I like to let my paper be the white, but do whatever works for you. You could go in with white and brush on white after this dries and roll with it. Anyhow, I hope you had some fun. I hope you had a chance to see something. Maybe it'll spark an idea and motivate you to try something yourself. So if you're looking for me, you'll find me in my art stable. This is Sheila Cannon saying thanks for watching. Have a great day.